We're live.
Howard and John show.
That's right. Good afternoon,
Howard,
John.
it's great to see you. Good afternoon.
Good seeing you. Yeah. Can't believe it's
Yeah,
Friday already.
it's election season, isn't it?
It's
I mean,
coming
that's
right
what I
up.
hear.
It's coming right up.
It's like what?
Yeah.
When do we find out? Are we going to find out the results right away, or what's going on
Nope.
there?
No way. Well, I think we're going to know, but we're going to, I think the issue is really how, is there going to be a big legal battle?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you can go look at, 4 years ago at this time, I firmly believed that Hillary had it in the bag.
Yeah.
As did, I guess,
Yeah, I did.
538. So
Yeah.
everyone had it in the bag, had her with it in the bag. And so
All bets are off. All bets are
off.
on. But
Yeah,
all bets might be off.
I think that I think it's going to be this is a painful time for our country, and
A lot of uncertainty.
a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of anxiety, and
Yep.
and
Are you anxious?
I am anxious.
What are you anxious about?
I feel, here's the thing: is like I mean, I'm going to be okay. I imagine things would have to get really bad for
Zombie apocalypse bad, probably.
zombie apocalypse bad,
Like where
and I
money
mean,
doesn't matter.
I've been really fortunate, and I feel terrible for the people who are kind of on the front lines of are these essential workers. And when I say essential workers, I mean doctors and busboys, and I mean
Yeah.
waiters, I mean baristas, I mean
Yep. Grocery store.
groceries, people who
Register,
are
yeah.
like, I mean the people who are working. It's not just doctors and registered nurses working in hospitals. It's also like cafeteria workers and
Sure.
custodians and um, nursing assistants and people and students. People who are working in working for
You
credit.
feel badly for students?
I feel badly for anyone who's being put in harm's way and doesn't have I mean, I guess everyone has a choice, but there's so many people being put in
Not
harm's
everybody
way.
has a choice. I don't think everybody has a choice. I think the people who are minimum wage hourly workers, they cannot break out of their their situation. They don't have a lot of optionality.
Right.
I don't feel that badly for students. I feel badly for students because of certain circumstances, but I mean, they seem like they're partying and having a great time.
No, I'm talking about like I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. I meant like nursing students. People.
Oh, right.
People who are when you're in the health fields, a lot of your time is doing practical shifts in medical studies. I feel people who they're we talk about healthcare workers, and for every doctor, there's, I don't know, I'm making this number up, there's probably 25, 30, maybe 100
or tech staff.
Or just people, just like home healthcare worker types, or people who are working in nursing homes.
Sure.
Imagine working in a nursing home.
No.
And, those are heroes.
Yeah.
Those people should be getting paid handsomely.
Yeah.
And
teachers too. Teachers too.
Teachers.
Yeah. I mean, some of them, are being forced to go back into the schools and teach.
And clean and now they're not.
Yeah.
Not only are they teaching and having to be educators, they're also having to be sort of public health officials.
Experts.
And they have to be sort of custodians, in their space, and having to clean the janitorial services, and they're and lives depend on how good of a job they're doing on every one of these things.
And many of them cannot say no.
It's right. They can't, particularly if you're like in a union job, but you can't say no. And
can't say no. Or you probably shouldn't say no if you want to keep your wages. You want to be able to, especially people who can't, they're living at already a very mean state. They can't, they paycheck by paycheck.
Yeah.
And so, I think that.
And what are you going to do? You're going to go from one job to another. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
These jobs, minimum wage jobs, hourly wage jobs, they're formulaic in many ways. It's like you're going to go from working from McDonald's to Burger King. You're going to go working from Walmart to, Amazon warehouse. It's all going to be the same basic deal, and it just feels, honestly, it feels like a scam, and people can't say no.
You say I can't say no, but but there are ways to say no in other areas. And I think even people who work in those, and this is kind of interesting to think about. Now today we are going to talk about saying no.
Yeah.
And how we've had to, no, you're not going to say no to me. No. We're going to talk about how we've experienced, saying no, and obviously saying no is a very difficult thing, but I wonder if there are ways, because you've heard of people who worked minimum wage jobs, mm-hmm. who were able to create for themselves a better life. And I wonder if it was by their ability to start saying no to certain circumstances and learn how to say yes to better circumstances or opportunities that can help them create optionality for them in their lives. And I wonder if how much of our lives are the way they are, or why we feel stuck or feel hopeless even at times, our own doing.
Well, have you ever, so yes, so we're talking about saying no.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to say yes.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to say no.
Why is it easy to say yes? Why do we say yes so often? Why do we say yes when we want to say no?
Because we're social creatures and we want to get along and we want to get the affirmation of our fellow humans, and we want the affirmation of our tribe. And saying yes is being a team player. Yes is being
nice.
Is being nice. Yes is being helpful. Yes is being is
a good human being.
Yeah. And
so, do you say yes a lot? When people make
yes,
you do. What can you? What's the most recent example? Doing this podcast.
Well, it's okay. I'm on the board of my condo association.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Did you get reeled in
I didn't
on that,
ask to be on the board of my condo association.
Okay.
Nobody asks to be on the board of their condo association. You get recruited. Some people do, right? Maybe one or two.
They like that. They like to wield the power.
Right. There are those, and God bless them. But I didn't ask. I was recruited, and my experience on them. So it's a 2-year term, and my 2 years ends next month. I guess the month after next, the end of December. Yeah. And I have the option of staying on or stepping down, or crossing my fingers and hoping someone runs against me, which is like, bring on the dirt, find these skeletons in my closet.
So why did you? So did you want to say no?
Yes.
Right when you got asked, you wanted to say no.
Oh, at the very beginning?
Yeah.
When, yes.
You did. So why didn't you say no? Why didn't you say no? What caused you to, I mean, in the nitty gritty, not the big picture.
Totally honest,
what happened?
I was flattered. I was flattered into saying,
massaging that ego.
Yeah.
What did he say to massage your ego?
She.
She.
Yeah. A member of the board. She said that she thought I'd be great at it. We really need you. You'd be a good addition.
Yes.
And we think you'd be fun. Those types of that kind of language. And I'm like,
stroking all the little areas.
And I'm like, and it's a big
behind the ears, stroking and everything.
I spent a lot of time, and it's not, being on the condo board is, it's not like, high stakes poker, but it is, it is a commitment. And and what thing it does do is it really, you sort of have to behave better as a board member in the association. Not that I'm a poorly behaved member of the association, but as a board member, I feel like I have to be.
You have to be a model.
Yeah, like I can't.
Exemplary.
I've got to make sure that I'm following all the rules, and there are a lot of rules. I'm parking straight. I don't know, but I just feel like I have to be extra kind to people. Maybe it brings out the best of me, but I have to listen and be patient, and you know,
how much time does it take?
Oh, probably about an hour a week. And then there's a 2.5 hour meeting every
month or something.
Yeah. And,
what?
And then, you know, throughout the year, there may be some duties that are, you know, some special projects. So it's not a huge investment at all.
No,
it's
no,
just this,
but it's still something
thing. Look, you know, because it's this thing. It's like, oh, I guess I won't be able to, like, in my wildest dreams, I have this maybe fantasy of taking a road trip to Alaska and being there for 6 months. You know, well, that's never going to happen. Not that I would really ever do that, but, you know, just it's just this thing hanging over you. You know.
But that's the thing. Saying no or saying yes. It basically it's saying a yes is always a no to something else, and that's, you know, obviously I think people already know that, but not everybody knows that in the moment.
Go into that.
Saying yes is always saying a no to something else. For example, you just said, you know, I don't have the freedom to be able to travel wherever I want to go because I made a commitment, because I said yes to this being on the board. I have to now say no to just the possibility or the freedom of doing whatever I want, whenever I want, for however long I want to do it. And so I think that right there is the crux of the issue for most of us, especially midlife.
It's that opportunity cost.
Yes, exactly. Because, you know, again, like, I think that when people are talking, like this one guy, I might have mentioned before, but this one guy, when my family and I lived in New York, and the playground, he was probably in his later 40s or maybe early 50s. And he's like, yeah, man, if we're just doing a math right now, like, I've got 27 summers left. It's like, whoa, he just broke it down into summers, life in the summer. I was like,
that's really heavy.
Summer. I was like, that's not a lot of summers if you're thinking about it, right? A quarter of a century worth of summers.
No, because I remember way earlier than 27 summers ago. I have fond memories of
exactly. So you think about that, like, now you're basically you are imprisoning yourself into a smaller area of life, a smaller surface area of life, because now you can't do what you actually want to do. And so and I wonder how many of us people in our midlives, or any part of your life, but how many of us are so committed to things that we don't have to be committed to. We only commit to it because we couldn't say no.
Well, I think we all are. And I think if you really were to scratch at people and really get them to open up and be, you know, like, tell me about your no disasters, you'd find
what's a no disaster?
A no disaster. Like, I married the person I shouldn't have married because I couldn't say no. I didn't want to disappoint them, so I threw my whole life away. You know, how many people live? So really, what that is a life of regret.
Yeah,
you know, a life of regret. And, you know, do you want to feel that? And I think we talked about this some time ago. Do you really, as you look back in your life, do you really want to have big regret?
Yeah.
So saying no, or not being able to say no, it's almost like when you're confronted with that, it's like a pregret, you know, like it's like a pregret when I should say no, but I know and
you got trademark
moment of
pain.
I know that moment of pain that you're trying to avoid is going to cost you so much more pain. Yeah. How many times have you been in a relationship, or, you know, in a job, or taken on a big, I'm not talking about a condo board. That's, you know, that's small stuff, but you know,
a real one.
A real big deal.
Real one. Yeah. No. I've done probably close to a dozen of them, but so I'll tell you one story. When I was young, I dated this one girl. I won't mention her name. She was perfectly fine human being, but I dated her and we were a horrible fit. And plus I was probably a terrible boyfriend, as I've mentioned before in past episodes. I still was. Oh, you can ask her. She will validate that statement.
We'll have her as a guest.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you want to come on now?
Yeah. I mean, I want to be transparent, but I don't know about that transparent. So then after we broke it off, I mean, it was like one of those serial, you know, on, off, and it was just not a good relationship. And I think, you know, after I finally said no more, or maybe she did, I'm pretty sure I did, it freed me up and made me think, what was I doing? Why was I even in that relationship? It was bad for her, bad for me. Why were we doing this? And I had this, like, it just a real, it was a scarring in me, thinking, I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot do that to myself ever again. And so ever since then, that's why with girls.
When was this?
This was a high school.
So this is
early.
This is early.
Early in my life. Yeah, I remember thinking, no, I do not want to be stuck. But there were times still, even when I dated people, I thought, well, maybe I can marry them, and try to force it. And when the whole,
what's the why? Like, why would you say that? Why
would I do that?
I can marry them and maybe things will be okay, or make it work.
I think we deceive ourselves so easily. At least I'll speak for myself. But when I was doing it, I was deceiving myself so easily. And I think I wanted to make things work because I was lonely, or I wanted to be in the relationship, or whatever it was, these driving forces. And a lot of my friends were getting married, and I just thought, I think I can make things work with this person. And I was convincing myself, and maybe I could have, maybe it would have worked out. But, deep down inside, I just, those are the things I was like, oh, I'm not sure about this person. I'm not sure. I didn't think we were the best fit, is basically what I meant. Right. And, finally at the end of it, when push came to shove, I was able to, not get back into it or whatever it was. And it was a constant battle within myself to say no, not just to other person, but to myself. And so I think
there's a part of you saying you should do this.
I should do this, or why wouldn't you do this? Or, they seem like a perfectly fine human being, or
you're hurting them, you're causing pain, you're causing, you've established this relationship and now you're pulling away.
Exactly. Don't rock the boat. All the things that we go through at least in my mind, that was causing me to just,
it's amazing, isn't it? Like
amazing.
It's like, and then you sort of pull the Band-Aid off and it's done. And it's like a weight off your shoulder, but that feeling of dread of the conversation.
Oh yeah. The dread,
it's enough to keep people to ruin people's lives.
Yeah.
To create the decision of not saying no is, it's unbelievable. And, and you look at any area of your life, it could be, your relationship, or, a job, have you ever taken a job because someone, flattered you, or you take a job that you really didn't want, or you want to leave and take another opportunity, but you get talked out of it, or these are very human situations. And really this is part of being look at, there's yes and there's no, and they kind of have to be in balance in your life. If your life is about,
I'm not even sure what that means. Like, what does that mean? What do you mean? How do you balance yes and no?
Well, why is it that we always say, I say yes. Again, I'm making this up. 8 out of 10 times.
Really? You say
probably
yes?
Yeah.
Really?
But I hide in my place. I try not to have much interaction with other people. Probably much for that reason. I'm my door's shut and I keep my shades down. No one's gonna.
Is anybody home?
Because I was gonna ask Howard if I can borrow his vacuum.
And so that's the way you try to protect yourself from needing to say yes.
I think it might have a big role in like, I'm not the most social person. I'm quite introverted.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is that, I get asked, and then, what's interesting is I get I go through this sort of these steps when I say yes to something I should say no to.
Yeah.
And first thing is I say yes. And then once that sort of transaction is done, I've agreed, then I beat myself up.
Really? So you go through a guilt and shame.
Angry at myself. And angry at the person who asked me,
So what do you do? What do you say to yourself?
It doesn't always happen. And I will say it didn't happen in the case of the condo association. I actually didn't have a whole lot of, it really re-upping is the question.
Did you feel that way about the podcast?
No,
You didn't?
no, I did not. I embrace this, and I do. I don't want to do the show notes.
We gotta split that.
I know we gotta split them up. I'm just telling you, I don't like doing show notes.
Nobody likes. We talked about that. Nobody likes doing show notes.
It's a necessary evil.
Yeah.
So but once you
service to our community,
there are benefits to doing the show notes.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, I lost my train of thought. Steps.
Yeah. Beginning angry at yourself.
I get angry at myself. I get angry at the person who I said yes to.
Yeah.
When I meant to say no. I get very angry in my mind. I have a very vicious, angry, one-sided scream fit. And that can
last. How do you work that out? How do you?
I don't work it out.
You don't work it out?
It just goes.
So you just gnaw at yourself, and then you eventually stop gnawing because your jaw is tired.
Basically, or
you fall asleep,
or I quit.
So you actually quit that thing that you've been asked to do.
So
you back yourself out.
Yeah, I could come up with a million examples. I was asked to be on a not-for-profit board a few years ago, and that's a good thing to be on a not-for-profit board. But I didn't want to be on the not-for-profit board. But I said yes, and I lasted like 2 months. I had no interest in this not-for-profit. They're a lovely organization, one that I did volunteer for, and I did help as they needed me in certain areas of that I could help. But that doesn't mean that I wanted to be a permanent member of a giant board, and I didn't want to do that. And I didn't have a great passion for the position, and I started to resent it.
Yeah.
And that
I've been there.
Have you been there?
Oh, for sure.
So I resented it. These people don't deserve my resentment. They deserve my support. They deserve my honesty. And so I finally wrote a letter, but I waited too long. And the letter that I wrote to the chairperson of the board was, the president of the board, was that I felt like I was being overwhelmed. And it's like, I sent that letter and I felt bad about that. I was like, that was you quit the board. I don't have time for this. This is really not something that I really can put.
But you do have time for it.
You're right. I do.
You do have time.
That's the thing. Is like, do you really need to give an excuse?
But you didn't want. No, I don't think you do.
I don't need to.
But I do. I think you.
And I did. So I lied, and then I felt bad about lying. It's like I got tons of time. I can do anything. If I can contemplate driving to Alaska for 6 months, I could be on your freaking board.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think for some reason we do not believe we have the right to choose what we want to do with our time.
Right.
And I think that's, for whatever reason of that being bred into us with the idea of what's being nice or whatever it is. But I had that total same thing, nonprofit. It was actually a guy that I deeply respected, deeply loved. Yeah. He's since passed, but he asked me to be on this board of a nonprofit, and I wanted to say no, but I just couldn't say no to him. Mm-hmm. And afterwards, I resented him. I resented the board. I resented them taking my time, and and it was just a terrible situation. And it was none of their fault. It was mine.
So, like, how long did you stay on?
I stayed on for a year, and I basically was a flake. I was a flake, and angry. And I felt terrible, and I felt guilty. I felt, I didn't feel that angry. I felt a little more resentful. I just felt bad the whole time and distracted. Mm-hmm. And so at that time, my business was really the busy. I was getting super busy. Yeah. We had a lot more people. It was very different circumstances. Yeah. So I wanted to focus on that, but I couldn't say yes to this guy. And so that was probably one of the worst yeses I said.
And how did it resolve?
Oh, it was terrible.
Really?
Me resigning after a year, I said I'd do it for a year. and I'll opt out or opt in, whatever. And I ended up opting out. And actually that whole thing caused me to pull away from that friend, because I did not want him into, not guilt. I didn't want him to influence my mind anymore, because I wanted to make my own independent decisions. And so I literally was like, I didn't even say anything to him. I just stopped hanging out with him. Yeah. And which I'm not gonna do that to you, Howard. So don't worry. I'll have a conversation with you if I ever feel like, oh my gosh, I kind of,
yeah, I want you to do the show notes.
I
just
promise,
don't ghost me.
I promise. I won't ghost you. He was the last person I did that to. And it was
that's a sad story.
Awful. It was sad. So sad. And so because I couldn't say no.
Because if you had said no, he would have gotten over it.
Yeah, he would have gotten over it.
Maybe not. Maybe he would have resented you.
I think he would have. No, I think he would have cared less. And it was my immaturity. That was a lesson I learned from that. It was my immaturity of not being able to say no. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's part of the problem. That's another dynamic, is that saying no up front is far easier than saying no later after you've already said yes. And so, I just didn't have the wherewithal, the maturity to be able to do it, and the courage. I think I didn't have the social courage to be able to say, you know what, so-and-so friend, I can't see myself doing this. I appreciate it. I feel very flattered. Mm-hmm. Felt very flattered too.
Right.
And I was like, I just can't. So that would have been so much easier.
Yeah, that would have been great. So I love this. I did a little prep for this episode because we talked about saying no, and I came up with I came across this blog called Science of People. Yeah, and it's there was one episode. We'll put a link in the show notes to this blog post. But this woman really talks about how to say no, and she really emphasizes not the need that there's no need to give an excuse, and the reason that you don't give an excuse is that you can't get argued with, because you don't want to do it. So if I say, I don't want to go to your party, I'm sorry I can't go to your party, I have something going on that night, then they can say, well, what time is your thing? You can come before or after. And then
it's really just kind of hanging out myself.
Yeah. Well, something.
I'm just hanging on myself.
So then you can, but the thing is that right in there, like that's that snarky little response that I fantasize about, and sometimes slips out of my mouth.
That's not snarky. It's being honest. That's what you would be doing.
That's on the same level as I gotta wash my hair. I gotta wash my hair. And,
is that snarky though? Is it snarky to say I'm hanging out myself?
Because it sounds like I've got plans with someone myself. I gotta cut my fingernails.
Okay,
you don't need. She says you don't need to have an excuse, and no is enough.
Yeah, no is enough. But sometimes it's not, because some people will say, "Well, why not?" They will literally say, "Why not?"
So in those cases,
what will she say about that?
You don't owe them an answer. It's not a debate. It's not a negotiation. You say, something. It's just something that
you can say, I prefer not to say. I just
prefer not to.
Yeah, or prefer not to. I prefer not to say. Yeah. I prefer not to do it. Mm-hmm. I think the trick is to how to do this kindly.
Right.
And
how to preserve the relationship with
the relationship. But I think most people who respect you will respect a no. But I think that a lot of times we also have to say the no respectfully. And so I think that's where a lot of us go wrong. And how do we say that in a way? I can't remember
why do we say no disrespect? Because yes is so kind, and yes, of course, I'd love to. That's easy.
Yes.
But no, it's almost like you got
to sugar it up.
No, you got to have a little anger though.
You got to thrust it.
You got to be like, because you got to be defensive.
Yeah.
I'm
well, I don't even know if you need to be, but we often
you don't need to. Right.
We have the stance of being defensive.
Right. And that's the thing. It's unnecessary. You don't have to do it. Now, right. I'm not.
What do you think causes that in you? What gets you to do that? Like what makes you
It's guilt, and it's that same regret. Use that term again. I feel I'm old enough to know how this is going to feel later. I don't want to do this. And I don't want you to argue with me, and I don't want to pay the consequences for not going. And I don't want to be, whatever. I don't want this hanging around. I don't want you calling me after the event saying what a great event I missed and how everyone missed me and how blah, blah, blah. And, and I don't want to, I don't want any of the consequences. I just want to not have been asked.
But do you ever feel loved by being asked, but you can actually politely bow out and then still preserve the relationship, but because sometimes when I feel asked,
very close friends, with people that really know me, like I could say no to you. I think we,
for sure. You've said no to me many times.
I've said no to you, and likewise, I think we have a good boundaries in our relationship.
Yeah, we're a trusting relationship.
And most of my close friendships I have now there are good boundaries.
Yeah.
But I think we're taught things when we're young that you're polite. You don't say, and politeness is saying yes. Mm-hmm. And that gets people into all kinds of trouble. That gets people into sexual trouble.
Yeah.
Think about that. Think about all the issues with these, you add a power imbalance to that equation.
Yeah.
And that's a terrible situation. Now you
create a cult.
You create a cult. You create a cult of two. You can have some bad things can happen.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say that the worst things in our society happen because people don't give themselves the permission to say no, and we don't give other people the permission to say no. We take it personally. Like
Yeah. Do you ever take it personally when somebody says no to you?
No, I don't.
You don't.
I don't.
Ever. Never.
Personally, I think I'm okay with people saying no. I may be a little disappointed.
Yeah.
I don't let my this is maybe a function of my age. I don't let my imagination like oh, it's going to be this great. It's like I don't think I've when I was dating, I had no expectations that people would want a second date with me. It wasn't like I was like my I didn't have it didn't have any expectations in any dating relationship or even, and I think maybe even with sales, I was in sales for so long that getting a no is just a normal thing.
It's natural.
It's a natural thing. I would prefer getting the no in sales quicker. A lot of times I think these issues can just tell me no,
drag on,
so that I don't because I'll just take you off my sales force, and we'll move on. But people are polite, and I guess that's polite. I don't know what that is. Is that polite? Sing?
No, I want another meal. I want another coffee.
Right. I want you to wine and dine me.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone enjoys that. I don't find it comfortable to go to a baseball game with somebody who's trying to sell me something.
Definitely not.
Maybe some people get into that.
If I know I'm going to say no. Yeah. If I know I'm going to say no, then definitely.
Yeah. I'll hear them out. But if it's like, would you like to switch to our service? And now it turns into that, then it's like, I don't want to do that, but you kind of know when they offer baseball tickets or something. I always want to say, thanks for the tickets. Are you going to be there, or am I just giving me the tickets? I'll take the tickets and I'll bring someone I want to bring. And that's that awkward question. Who's going to be there?
Yeah.
I'll be there. It's like,
yeah. Well, maybe I'll give away the tickets.
Right.
So what's one of the best lessons you have learned about saying no? Like, how is it a way you say no, or what are you trying to put into practice now that you've learned over the years?
I'm not going to say that I'm an expert or have even learned, I'm still a novice at saying no. It's hard for me to say no. And yes is such a shortcut. It is such an easy, frictionless path for the moment. Mm-hmm. That it is like candy, No is like a poop sandwich, man. It's like, you gotta, and it is always easy to take that path of least resistance and say yes, and then deal with it later, or, or
short-term
convince
thinking,
yourself that it'll be, like you said in that relationship in high school, I'll make it work. It'll be great. You try to psych yourself up for it. I don't have the answers. I just, I do know that when I say no to something and it's past, that the conversation's over and I've held my ground, I feel great. I feel like I have agency. I feel like am empowered, and I feel like I've been respected. And if I've done it well, they've been respected, that they're respected, and that their need is their need, and that isn't my need also. And, and again, I think I also love what you said earlier about it, that opportunity cost issue, that frees me up to say yes to something I want to do.
For sure. Yeah. I think that, I wonder, like a lot of us, I think, make short-term decisions when we say no. It's not a long-term decision-making principle. And I think that a lot of times when we say, when we have a hard time saying no, is because we also don't have clearly defined goals or clearly defined objectives of how we want to spend our time, especially in midlife. I mean, again, we have 27 more summers. I think we should be thinking about, you love that phrase, right? Yeah, we all love that phrase. Once we start really thinking about that in those terms, I think that, one, we've got to face it. And then two, once we come to that realization, I don't think we need to be paranoid about our time, but I definitely think we should be thinking about how to optimize our time, how to utilize it better. And part of that is thinking about, what do we want to accomplish in those 2, 3, maybe 4 decades, maybe 5, who knows, maybe become,
if you were so inspired and so excited about the things that you envisioned for your next 27 years, 27 summers, saying no to something would be so easy. So easy. But we don't. So that's interesting. So we don't say, so we say no because our time really isn't, we don't really see our time as our own. We don't.
It's not valuable. We don't have a purpose for it.
Right.
Yeah, I think we have a purpose for it. We be able to have to say, I for this time, I think it's easier for people who have a family, like you have kids, like it makes it easier because, oh man, I'm inundated. I can use my family as a perfect excuse for anything, right? But it is, and it's a legitimate reason. But I think that when you have less, like, responsibility for other humans, like it just makes it harder. But if you have this objective, hey, listen, I'm trying to do X, Y, Z. I'm trying to become fitter. I'm trying to become a better at X, Y, Z and learning this, that, and the other. I'm trying to have more, space for my brain to be able to process these things. Then voila. I mean, you've got the reason why you can't do X, Y, Z, because I'm trying to do this. I remember back in school when students, like serious students, you ask them, hey, you want to go hang out? No, I can't hang, because I study and you have a routine. I think the other thing is a lot of us don't have a routine.
I'm focused. I've got this dream that's 2 years away from now. I'm going to get into this school and this program. And it's going to rock, and I'm not going to let anything
get in my way.
Right.
So
I do know those people, and they were awesome. Yeah.
And they're all, they had this goal, they had this purpose. I think in our lives too, we can have that type of focus and purpose. And I think it will only enrich our lives. I think we could become compulsive and obsessive about it. But I think more than that, if we are balanced, is the word I think you used, we can actually have a sense of agency over our time. And that will help. It'll make it easy to say no. Hey, I've got my routine. This is what I do. Like, I do this with my family. I exercise this time. I can't go to your barbecue.
Right. It's just not. It's not something that I
can't do it.
Yeah. And so, do you practice saying no? Is it something you practice? Is someone that we could assign homework for and kind of say, hey, listeners, here's what you should do if you have say no? You know,
I would say, figure out those 2 to 3 things you really want to accomplish in the next 2 decades or 1 decade, or 5 years,
mm-hmm.
and say, well, what does it take to do that? And make sure things don't get, I mean, of course we can say yes to things.
You don't need to have a grand project to justify. You don't have to justify your no.
No, you don't have to justify. It just makes it easier.
It gives you right. And it's always better to have some inspiration in your life. I believe motivation and inspiration are essential, but just for the record, you don't have to have a reason.
No, you don't have to have
no. No. You say it kind. So how do you say no kindly?
I remember hearing Seth Godin talk about it. For me, I'd say, I appreciate it, but I just don't think that. I don't think so. I'm not going to do that. Or I'll just say, no, thank you.
Yeah.
That's it. Make it, I think, very direct, very short and sweet. They ask why, it's like, I just don't think it's a good fit. Or if they ask me to do something that or like just today, like I ran to an old friend. I've known this guy since he was a teenager. When I was in my 20s, I was like a youth group leader, and I care for the guy. I love the guy, but I haven't seen him like probably almost 6 years or 5 years, something like that.
Right.
And anyway, he's like, "Hey, are you hugging?" I'm like, "No, I'm not hugging." A lot of no's being said these days. No, I'm not hugging. No, I'm just the other day, someone's like, "Hey, do you want to get coffee?" I'm like, "Yeah, I want to get coffee." It's like, but he's like, "Yeah," he was willing to meet indoors. I'm like, "No, I'm not willing to meet indoors."
Right.
And so I think that people who are able to say no, people who really want to be around you, want to hang out with you, they'll learn how to work around you if it's a reasonable no. And so for me, that it's just, I think, being direct and as clear as possible without, in my tone, being if it's just very matter of fact.
What about issuing an alternative, like offering alternative?
For sure.
Saying, I'm not having coffie inside of cafes, but I'd be happy to take a walk.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, I was like, "Hey, I'm willing to sit outside." Because I used to not even meet people at all other than you and take our walks.
And we walk on opposite sides of the street.
Yeah.
And really talk on the phone.
We don't do that. We text. And just
we text.
We text each other because we want to open our mouths and cause aerosolization of our breath.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I do. And I think having my routine, as I mean, dude, we go to bed at like 7:30. That doesn't leave a lot of time to go out.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's how I do it. That's how I've learned. And I think that how it's become easier for me. What are you practicing these days? What are you thinking?
Well, when it comes to saying no, because I do get a fair number of requests, and it's one technique that helps me if I'm really struggling with a no. Like, there's one thing, there's different levels. Okay. So like if a telemarketer calls and says, will you, it's easy. You say, I'm not interested. No, thanks. End of story. But when it's someone who's like, your mom or your, I have a hard time saying no to my mom.
Sure. Most people do.
Yeah. And,
I do for sure.
Or if it's someone like, I do get a lot of calls, like messages, and and I listen from young people who want to start businesses, or I get referred, someone
mentoring. This is the reason why we should be doing our business podcast. Anyway, we can talk about that later.
No.
I feel good.
Shut that shit down.
I feel strong. Anyway, the backstory is Howard and I've been pitching Howard about this, doing a business podcast or webinars for young entrepreneurs, or not even young entrepreneurs, just people who want to start businesses. And this has been on the background of our conversations, and he's been hemming and hawing and mostly saying no, and been very much digging in his heels. And that's what this was all about.
Yeah. So, I mean, no. Yeah. And so I do get calls occasionally, and they're bright, brilliant kids with ideas. I wouldn't say they're brilliant ideas, but sometimes they're not. And I'm always waiting at the end. It's like, would you be willing to invest?
Oh, really? So there's always a pitch at the
end. There's always something at the end. There's always something. Is this something that you might be interested in being on our board, or is this, something that's really not my thing? But I'm always happy to take a phone call or an email if you have a question. Something like that. Again, I feel it coming up right now, and there's not even, it's like,
really. So you feel the blood pressure, I feel
it now, even as
you feel the physiological change just by thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
The situation. That's interesting. So how do you deal with that? So I'm assuming that other people feel the physiological changes in their bodies. Yeah. And just thinking about the situation of being asked to being asked something that you want to say no to, but you feel like you can't. What do you deal with that? How would you want to deal with that?
I would want to deal with it by quickly saying no. And I'm honored. This is the ideal answer. I'm honored by your request. I'm honored that you'd want me to be part of your project.
Yeah.
Is not something that I can do right now because it's really not in my wheelhouse. That's really, it's not in my wheelhouse, and so that's not, so I'm going to pass on that, but I'm going to wish you the very best of luck.
So, I think that, I think your answer is great, except the fact that, it's not in your wheelhouse, that kind of language. I would just say that, I don't want to, I don't invest in I don't invest in things. I don't know how to invest in these things. If you would be, that's honest. You've never really done that.
You're right. Well, I think we both have this sort of, it's even with these hypotheticals.
Yeah.
We both have these, this, I guess, reflexive response to negotiate. To have a reason, You said, well, it's not in my wheelhouse. To say, well, I don't know how to invest. What's the difference? It's a reason and a reason can be argued against. Why isn't it enough just to say, no, thanks?
No thanks. Or exactly. No, thanks. And
thanks for the offer.
I appreciate it. Yeah. I appreciate the offer.
Right.
I feel flattered, but no, thank you. I'm just not interested in that.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm not interested in you. I'm just not interested in that.
I don't have time to do it. Well, what else are you doing? I don't know.
Well, you could say, well, it's because it's a question I think I could see myself asking, but it's a pretty invasive question. And you say, well,
that kind of question.
I would totally ask you,
man. It's okay. I know you, but well,
I already know you're not.
You're always like, why not? What are you doing? He said, what are you like? This dude's persistent. That's one of the reasons I love you. Also one of the reasons I hate you. No.
I would hate myself too. So I do think that if somebody asks you that type of question, and it's not type in your nature necessarily all the time, but I would just be like, hey man, it's none of your business really, is it?
I love that. I love that.
Especially if you don't know them that well. For me, you'd be like, dude, what are you talking about? Get out of here. I'm not doing much. I just don't want to do it. Right. But for somebody who don't know, you'd easily say why is this your business? I just said no.
Right.
Just take it as no. But take also the yes. Take the yes.
Yeah.
I'm saying, hey, I'm open to talking to you more.
So there is a question that you cannot say no to.
What?
And that is, will you subscribe to this podcast?
110%.
Right.
You have to say yes.
You have to.
You know why? Why? Because we will add to your 27 summers.
That's right. It could add to your 27 summers.
Yes, it will add value to your 27 summers. 100%.
Right.
So great conversation. Say no more often. And especially I think we need to be thinking about how should we be spending our time better? What can we be doing to actually maximize or at least optimize our time in a way that's going to be heading toward our goals and the purposes that we want to live for.
And saying no to something that you don't want to do frees that position up for someone who says yes and really wants to do it.
Yes.
And that's 100%. A gift. That's a gift.
That is a gift.
Yeah. All right. Next week.
Great hanging out.
And who knows? Next week we're going to I guess we'll have we'll know the result of the election.
We'll know the result. We can talk about that.
You know the results of Halloween.
Are you gonna write a blog post? You said
yes, I will write a blog post. I will write the blog post. And I want to write the blog post.
Okay. I will do the show notes.
You'll do the show notes. I will write the blog post.
All right. Have a great one, you guys. Have a great one, Howard.
Bye.